week that we have. We've been doing well. And I was much more impressed this week with the discussion forums. I did receive a few emails. So let me go through my expectations again. Well, first, this is first day of bird season and bird hunting season here in Texas. So my brother-in-law and his kids are over there somewhere with their shotguns shooting birds. So if you hear gunfire in the background, it's not a war starting. It's not the crimes of the mean streets of Merkel, Texas. It's just family over here and friends and neighbors over here shooting birds. I'd go bird hunting myself, but I don't own a shotgun. I own handguns and rifles. My hunting season will start on the first Saturday of November. Anyway, so let's get going. The discussion forums. I've had a few emails asking about the discussion forums again for clarification. So let me clarify. You are required to submit an original post. I would hope that you submitted your original post by Wednesday of the week. Then you are required to respond. Well, let's back up. This original post must be a minimum of 250 words. It must answer all portions of the question, and it must have a list of sources. You do not need to upload a document. You can post your discussion right there in the discussion forum window. You give me your body using your intentions, and then after it's done, you give me a list of sources. I like to see students who go outside of the textbook. I know the only text that I've given you, the only reading I have required is the text, but each week we've got a subject that's coming up, and you have a questions to answer. You also have a research project coming up, and the research project is going to require 6 sources other than your textbook. Okay. So I really like it when you go outside the box, and I like it when you give me answers that are not straight from the textbook. Okay. I did read a lot of people today. It seems like several of you just copied the textbook straight out, and that is unacceptable. But anyway, after you've done your original post by Wednesday, on Thursday or Friday, I expect you to answer at least 3 of your colleagues' original posts with a substantive response of a minimum of 100 words and using sources to back up what you're saying. Again, you can use the textbook, but I prefer it and I like it when you go beyond the textbook and research the topics that we're having. And then by Sunday, I need you to respond to at least 2 of the people that responded to you, and or reply to at least 2 of the people that responded to you. One of the questions was, well, and one of the issues from last week was, well, not everybody posted. And this is true. Okay. So if you see somebody that already has 3, 4, 5 responses, go find somebody else to talk to. So this way, there's 2 people in there that had over 7 responses. But I think that also had to deal with the student themselves responding to everyone that responded to them, which I really do appreciate. If only one person responds to you, that's probably going to be me. I'm going to do my best on Thursday, Saturday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday to do my best to respond to each and every one of you, to all 39 of you. We did have 3 people that did not participate this week. As opposed to last week, there was only 2. And then this is how the discussion's going. If I respond to you, I really do expect an answer because I'm going to ask you an additional follow-up question based upon your response. And I really want you to answer that question. Another email that I received was asking about extra credit and if there's going to be an extra credit project at some point during the semester. And no, there's not. I do not give extra credit per se. What I give are extra points. Okay, so if your answer to the discussion forum properly addresses the topic and you use outside sources beyond the textbook and you respond to everybody, you respond to me, or you reply to everybody and you reply to me, I will give you extra points for the week. So yes, the rubric, and I grade by the rubric. I grade following the rubric. The rubric has 4 parts to it. The first one is your original post. Your second one is your responses. Your third one is your replies. Your fourth one doesn't actually add or subtract any points to it. It gives me an opportunity to further your grade. It gives me the opportunity to give you additional feedback upon your participation this particular week. Any posts that occur after midnight on Sunday evening, do not count towards your grade. So those of you that said, well, I didn't understand, I went back and I did all of this on Monday or Tuesday, that doesn't count. Okay, so extra points come based upon your extra work in each of the discussions that we're going to be having over the next several weeks. Okay, so hopefully that's addressed all of that. We had a lively discussion this past week, and I'm really excited and impressed with the work that you guys have done. So let's move on to this week's lecture. I think I have it figured out so that you're not just looking at me or the home screen. You're looking at the actual lecture as I go through. So we're sharing my screen. We're opening up, turning this into a... So here we go. Let's get started. Evidence-based corrections and professionalism. This is chapter 2 of our textbook by Frank Smollinger and John Ortiz Smykla. I like these two guys. If I bump into their textbooks, I will always use them in my classes. So the learning objectives this week are to define evidence-based corrections, explain the important role that it plays in those corrections, explain the importance of professionalism. And I know we'll get to it, but professionalism is extremely, extremely important. And we're going to spend some time discussing that. Understand what is meant by social diversity and explain why issues of race, gender, and ethnicity are important in corrections today. Okay, so evidence-based corrections, or EBC, is the application of social scientific techniques to the study of correctional practices, programs, and procedures. And this is to increase the effectiveness and enhance the efficient use of available resources. Okay, this cost-benefit analysis is also evidence-based corrections. And one of the things that we do in my programs is excuse me, I got a rooster trying to get into my garden. What a shame. Everything's burned up anyway. Okay, so we want to make sure that the practices and the programs that we're offering our offender population are effective. So this is how that we're going to go about doing that. We're going to have a pre-test, a post-test, much like the pre-test that you took for this class. You're going to see that test again at the end of the semester, and we're going to see the differences that were made between the two tests. Okay. So the history of evidence-based correction started in the mid-1990s, and separate efforts were made to identify crime. They were established to try to determine how we can alleviate crime. How can we fight crime? What are the best policies and procedures? We have moved into this evidence-based world, statistics-based world, research-based world. The University of California, Irvine created the Center for Evidence-Based Corrections, what helps correctional officers make decisions based on scientific evidence. Helps us as correctional officers to determine what is the most important thing for us to do regarding the decisions and the programs that we provide. Evidence-based programs are utilized in corrections. Law enforcement professionals apprehend perpetrators. Correctional professionals process, monitor, rehabilitate those offenders throughout their confinement as ordered by the courts. And one of the things that we do this by is through evidence-based programming. Okay. The wider use of community corrections, reentry programs, sentences that divert offenders from prison will serve as rehabilitation goals. But if the rehabilitation in reentry and community corrections are not helping, they're going to end up in prison again, and they're going to end up back in prison where they're going to end up dealing with me. Okay. And likely, and if we use programs that are proven to work, proven to assist, it's likely to lead to a reduction in corrections related budgets. It will, because a lot of you discussed the financial problems and hardships that we're having within institutional corrections and our inmate population and being able to afford it, which was a great discussion. I asked a lot of you. There's some predictions, both in the economic circles and within YouTube profits, that suggests that starting this month in September and October, we're going to start seeing a depression. We're going to want to fight against it. We're not going to want to identify it. We're not wanting to go do these things. But by the time 2026 rolls around, it is going to be full-fledged. And some of the YouTube prophets that are talking about this are suggesting that it's because, and the economists, I shared an article last week by Fred Foyer called Depression 2026 ? They're suggesting that we cannot maintain the status quo of the spending that we're doing. And our chickens are going to come home to roost, and we're going to default, and we're going to have a horrible time with the economy throughout 26 and into the 2030s. I hope they're wrong. I pray they're wrong. But we are always looking for, and what we need to do as an agency, as a corrections department or Department of Corrections, is to find ways to reduce costs. We find it funny that for a place that uses so much electricity, we're trying to conserve electricity. If I'm not in my office, I'm supposed to turn my lights off, turn my computer off, which is okay. But the lights in the hallway outside of my office and outside of the chapel stay on all the time, so that when officers walk by, they can look in the hallway, see if there's any inmates or anybody in there hiding or whatever. But shredding paper, recycling. I find it funny. They have the prison I work at, they only sell sodas in aluminum cans. And then inmates are required, and officers and everybody, staff, are required to put the aluminum cans in recycle bins. And then the state, the prison goes and they bring all of these cans once a day, hundreds of pounds, thousands of pounds of aluminum to the recycle center every month or every week. So the state makes money off of your cans. The can of soda costs 50 cents from the commissary, and then they get 52 cents a pound, 54 cents a pound for the aluminum that they're recycling. But they also want to find ways to reduce corrections costs by not having you be on corrections. Okay, if we can rehabilitate an individual and turn them into a productive member of society, then we're going to turn around and we're going to reduce the costs and reduce the requirements, reduce the cost of corrections and keeping somebody in prison or keeping somebody keep somebody outside of prison. It'll help us save money. It'll help us create a world to where we can eliminate corrections altogether. Wouldn't it be great if we could find a way to make every American citizen a productive member of society? Pretty cool idea. So professionalism in corrections. Professionalism in corrections is extremely important. Okay. And an occupation is granted high status by the virtue of the personal integrity of its members. We have a whole bunch of people. We have a whole bunch of people in our system that are employed in our system that are just as corrupt as the inmates themselves. Okay. The training class before me that coming into the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, all staff members, regardless of their position within the prison, must go through the basic pre-service correctional officer academy. They are required to shoot, they're required to use gas, they're required to learn how to fight and defend themselves. They're required to do all of these things. The class before mine had 45 people in it. By the time we were finished, of that original class, there were 10 left. Within 3 days of us starting our academy class, one of the women was caught transporting drugs and cell phones into a maximum security prison, and now she is wearing white. And white is the color of the Texas prison's inmates uniform. And there were a bunch of people, even in my class. We had a guy, and we'll just call him Martinez because that was his last name. He was walked off the unit because of excessive use of force. Within 3 weeks of being employed as a correctional officer, within 3 weeks of finishing his training, within 3 weeks of being put on 12 building, he was terminated, walked off for excessive use of force. He had gotten into a minimum of 2 uses of forces every day for 3 weeks. And that's just not necessary. That's excessive use of force. You need to lead by example. Okay, so these inmates have broken the law, and they have committed a crime that put them into a place of incarceration. The people that we hire to guard them, to correct them, need to be above reproach. Okay, they can't be using drugs. They can't be stealing and DWI. They can't be breaking the law themselves. They can't be accepting bribes and establishing relationships. Okay, we summarize that the attitude of a true professional by noting that his character, or he's characterized by the following: a self-regulation through a set of internal guidelines. You have to have a set of ethics. And I was thinking about having a whole ethical lecture today, but I'm not going to. Continual self-appraisal and self-examination of your actions within the fence, an inner sense of professionalism, an adherence to the ethical principles of one's profession, a commitment to lifelong learning, lifelong betterment within the profession, a commitment to the code of conduct. Okay, so I first walked onto the Wallace unit, and my office is in education. At the time, I had 2 offices, one out in the Webb Center and then one in education where I have my day-to-day chapel. So I'm sitting there, and the correctional officer comes up to me and says, "Chap, one of your life coaches is having an inappropriate relationship with the librarian." So I looked into it, I investigated, and I didn't see anything inappropriate. What I saw was a librarian allowing an inmate to get too close, talking about things that's none of their business. And the librarian should have said, "Hey, you're spending too much time here. You're getting too close." I tried to talk to them. I tried to tell them, "Hey, this is what you need to do." And as the investigation continued, we found that they were actually having a sexual relationship. One of my other peer ministers was accused of standing jiggers. And for those of you that don't know what standing jiggers means, it's being the watching out for officers to make sure that they can conduct their sexual relationship without being interrupted or without being caught by corrections. The Texas prison system, unlike the federal prison system, does not have cameras on every corner. The prison's not filled with cameras. My time in the federal prison system, there was a camera everywhere covering every inch of the prison, except for the bathrooms and the showers. There were still cameras there, but everything was blurred so that you couldn't tell who was doing what or what was going on. So it's important that you hold yourself to a standard, to an ethical code that prevents you from breaking the rules and the regulations. The steps taken by the American Correctional Association is standards and training and what they expect. They have set a specified standard for given positions within corrections. I am allowed to have a different relationship with an inmate than the librarian is or than an officer is. Okay, there's a set identified training topics. We have to have training on disabilities. We have to have training on all kinds of things that lead to a more professional area. We have HIPAA violations. There's PREA violations, and HIPAA is the Health Information Freedom Act, where we're not allowed to share what we know about other inmates' health concerns. We're not allowed to, the Prison Rape Elimination Act. Inmates are not allowed to have consensual sex. Well, they're not allowed to have consensual sex because they cannot give consent. Everybody that they deal with inside that fence has a power and a position of authority over them. So they cannot be given or they don't have the ability to give consent to sexual ideas or sexual activities. Specific numbers of hours for pre-service and annual training. Okay, my pre-service training was 6 weeks. It's now gone up to 8 weeks, and then there is a period of on-the-job training of 2 weeks that has to go through, and I think that's actually 40 hours of on-the-job training after your 8 weeks of in pre-service training. Annual service training is 40 hours, and mentioning that, I have my annual in-service training next week, Monday through Friday, from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. on some campground outside of Houston. So next week's lecture is going to be recorded probably early Sunday morning before I get on the road and travel. So next week, contact with me is going to be kind of hard. I'm going to be out of pocket. I don't know what kind of internet resources are available on that campground, but I will do my best. Specific basic administrative policy and support requirements. We've got an ACA coordinator on our unit that makes sure that the prison stays in coordination with ACA all the time. So monthly, I have to send her my program schedule. I have to send her the numbers of people that I serve, the number of Facebook funerals that we've attended, the number of prayer requests, the number of I-60s or inmate requests, official inmate requests, the number of classes, the number of students, all of the things that I do, I have to report every week. And this is tracked by the American Correctional Associations. We are a certified, accredited prison. So training standards help ensure the education is uniform. So it doesn't matter if you're an inmate, if you're an officer on my prison, or you're an officer at the Robertson unit, if you are a maximum security, medium security, my prison is a medium security unit, or a minimum security unit, or a trustee camp, every officer has the same exact training. These standards are supplement training by setting minimum requirements for entry into the profession, for detailing expectations for those involved in everyday life of correctional work, establishing basic requirements for facilities, programs, and practices. These are all required by ACA. They're required by every state in their Department of Corrections. For example, to have my job, you have to have a minimum of a bachelor's degree in divinity, theology, ministry, human services, public administration, or criminal justice. And my education, as you've seen, my education includes a master's degree in public administration, a master's degree in criminal justice, and a PhD in human services, specializing in inmate rehabilitation and treatment. So I guess I am the perfect example of a perfect candidate to be a chaplain within the Texas prison system. But you also have to be ordained by a religious group, and endorsed by a church or a synagogue. So I'm officially ordained through the Universal Life Church. Personally, I believe that's a scam, but the synagogue that I help run is not a 501c3. It's not classified as a church, so to speak. It is a group. We call it a Torah group. So they still endorse me, but I also get an endorsement from the Universal Life Church. And these are basic requirements to get a job. Okay. Skills and knowledge required to be a correctional officer. Accountability. And this is the most important thing. You have to be accountable for the actions that you take and the actions that you make. You have to have the ability to say, yes, this is what I did. You have to have the moral fortitude, the spine, to be able to say, yes, I did this. Okay, admit your wrongs. A lot of people will try to dissuade or say, no, I didn't do that. That wasn't me. They'll hide, and then all of a sudden they'll find themselves in a world of hurt, because once you have become subject to corruption, you will become corrupt, and then the inmates will use that as blackmail to get you to do more things against them. The corrections professional is a dedicated person of high moral character and personal integrity who is employed in the field of corrections and takes professionalism to heart. And more importantly, we are an example. We are supposed to be an example to the inmates. And if we're just as corrupt as the inmates, things aren't going to go well. We're going to probably find ourselves an inmate as well. Professional associations organize groups of like-minded individuals who work to enhance professional status of members. I am a member of the Texas Public Government Employees Union. I am a member of Americans Corrections Association. I'm a member of all of these the Texas Probation Association. These professional groups I'm a member of. I'm also a member of a group of social work. They give us additional training, additional education, additional support to be able to stand um, with integrity and above reproach. We have to always be above reproach. The standard setting organizations like the American Correctional Association, American Probation and Parole Association, American Jail Association, I'm members of all of those, um, develop standards to guide training, to clarify what is expected of those working in corrections. They have annual conferences and things for people to go to so that they can increase their training and their understanding and their application of corrections, whether it's institutional or community. They give credentialing process. It involves testing and career development assessments. I am a credentialed member of the American Criminal Justice Association. Okay. I'm part of the American Corrections Association. The process is used to formally recognize the skills, knowledge, and abilities of correctional personnel. Does it help you get any more money? No, it doesn't. But it helps give you the strength, it helps give you fortitude, and it gives you the backing to be able to stand for what is right in a world where everybody is wrong. Education is the component of true professionalism. In addition to basic job skills and job specific training, it builds critical thinking skills, it builds the problem solving skills. It also helps increase your integrity. Having education does more for you as a professional than anything else that we can do. It allows the application of theory and ethical principles to a multitude of situations. Okay, you can be approached by anything. Okay, so something simple, as a working inside the fence, I have a commissary account, and I put $25 on my commissary account. When I want a soda or a bag of chips or a snack or something, I'll go to the commissary, and there's always an inmate there uh, buying soup and ice cream and all the things that you can get. And they always offer me something. Here, chap, have an ice cream. Here, chap, have a soda. Okay, this is grass eating. Okay, it's an attempt to establish a relationship. It's an attempt to establish a relationship that they can manipulate. Because if they give you something and you accept it, that's a bribe. Now all of a sudden they've got something on you. Well, you remember I gave you that? That's a bribe. That's establishing a relationship and you can be fired. So unless you do this, I'm going to turn you in. What am I going to do? I'm not going to go to prison. I'm already in prison. Okay, so you need to be very careful of the things that you do. And I continually say, no, I can't accept that from you. And they go, come on, chap, it's just a piece of candy. Come on, chap, it's just a soda. Come on, chap, it's nothing. Take this. And I go, trying to establish a relationship. What are you trying to do? Get me fired? What are you trying to do? Get me sent to prison? Because I know that it's not going to stop with this Coke. It's not going to stop with this piece of candy. It's not going to stop with these chips. Once I accept something from you, then everything else is fair game, and you're going to demand that I start bringing things into the prison like phones and drugs and alcohol and cigarettes and things that are not allowed inside the prison. You're going to start demanding it of me, and I am going to end up getting in trouble. Okay, so education is important. You should always continue your education when you are a correctional officer. You know, you're not required a college degree to become a correctional officer, but it's important that you get one. And there's several officers in this class who are pursuing their education. And as they pursue their education, it will increase their professionalism within the job, and they'll become better correctional officers. Uh, Social diversity and correction. Okay, so race, ethnicity, gender. Racism is the systemic oppression of a racial group to the social, economic, political advantage to another group. Racism can lead to inequalities in hiring, promotion for those working in corrections. Ethnicity, prison gangs are built around ethnicity, and they can lead to serious consequences. Okay, so and it's prison politics is skin color politics, black, brown, white, or yellow. Okay. For some reason, the Jews end up with the whites, the Native Americans end up either with the whites or the browns. Um, the color of your skin determines your prison game, and it makes life difficult. I found it humorous. I bumped into a member of the Texas, the Aryan Brotherhood of Texas, and even one of the founders, Bingham, one of the founders of the Aryan Brotherhood. His name is Bingham. He has the swastika on one arm, and he has the Star of David on the other arm because he's actually Jewish, but he is a member of a white supremacy group. They don't care about your faith or your religion as much as they care about the color of your skin. So the Jews and the neo-Nazis work together inside the prison system against the Hispanics, against the blacks, against the Asians. And then the Native Americans are appointed or assigned to the white group or the brown group, depending upon the melanin in their skin and their skin complexion. Women working in corrections are underrepresented in supervisory positions. We cannot discriminate against people based upon their gender or gender identification to come work in a prison system. But as a man, I would not want to work in a women's prison. I've worked in a prison where they house women, and it is a quagmire. If your eyes linger too long to a woman who's changing clothes or is in the shower, you're gonna get written up for a PREA. The same thing with the women. I had a woman that worked for me when I was a shift sergeant, and she was going through and she was doing count in one of the dorms, and she stopped and waited too long, and the video showed it. She stood too long at a particular bunk, and the bunk and the inmate in the bunk was just outside the camera view, but we watched her walk over there, and then she took a little while coming back. Well, he filed a PREA complaint because he said that he was naked, and she stood there gawking at his manhood, and then making comments about how large it would get once it became erect. It's a dangerous world working in a prison of the opposite gender. But with the LGBTQ community that's running around, you might have the same problems with same gender individuals, men or women working in a men or women's prison if they're sexually attracted to the inmate population that's there. But we need to make sure we do ensure that there's social diversity. Not every correctional officer is white. Not every correctional officer is a man. Not every correctional officer is a Christian. Not every correctional officer is straight. We've got a good diversity. Correctional personnel by gender and rank. Okay, so juvenile facilities between men and women is almost equal. Line operations, and that is the standard correctional officer. It's 63 to 37. And I don't know how accurate. I work in a prison that it's mostly women. Supervision, yeah, I can see that. The supervisory roles is 71% for males, 29% for females. I've had female wardens at the unit that I work at. There's women in the higher echelons, but not a whole lot of them. We have one female who is a captain on my unit. All the other captains, well, the other captain is a male, so that would be 50-50. We have 3 female lieutenants, and we have 3 female sergeants. The rest of the staff, it runs about a 75-25% category. But the line officers, there seems to be a whole lot more women working the line officers, and then they have problems. They don't want to work closed custody. They don't want to work the SEG because things are quite violent there. Things are quite deviant there. Um, there's a whole lot of guys that decide to manually manipulate themselves when they see women on the wing. So impacts social diversity and corrections impact individual correctional clients. It determines correctional populations and trends. It affects the lives and interests of those working in the field, and it changes the structure and functioning of correctional institutions. You know, there's this one woman who works 5 building. Um, she either works 3 building or 5 building. 3 building is our incentive wings. Our 5 building is the dormitories. And everybody calls her Granny. She's an older woman. She's in her 60s. And everybody calls her Granny. She is a stickler for the rules. She will yell at you quicker than you can yell at anything. And the inmates call her Granny. And they know not to get on grandma's and big mama's nerves. But it changes the culture. The way the inmates treat Granny is a lot different than the way they treat the young 18-year-old male who just got out of high school. So that is our lecture for the week. I guess the biggest thing that I would like to share today or share with you guys today is the fact or the importance of professionalism. You are an example, and I keep telling my inmates, again, I am a chaplain, I am a preacher, I am a pastor, I am a rabbi, I'm an imam, I'm a hoja, I'm a shaman, I am the religious representative for over 172 faiths that are represented on my prison. So what I tell my inmates is that you are a inmate, you broke the law, you committed a crime, you're in this prison because you violated the social contract. And the only way that you are going to leave here is when the parole board has determined that you are a suitable and that you have been rehabilitated to a point where you can rejoin society and become a productive member of society. But are you going to be successful? I can tell you how you're going to be successful. You're going to be successful if your heart is right with your God, whether it is Jesus or Yahweh or Yeshua or Allah or Muhammad or Buddha or the four winds or the great turtle or Satan and Lucifer or whomever your God is, Odin. You know, we've got a big Odinist festival coming up. We've got Rosh Hashanah coming up. Yeah, like my t-shirt. Problem, write a grievance. Spell my name right. Nobody can spell my name right. My name is Fisher. Fisher. Everybody wants to put a C in it. But as I was saying, if you want to become successful once you leave prison, your heart has to be right with God. If you want to be successful as a correctional officer, your heart has to be right with your God. Okay. I'm not dictating that you have to have any specific God or any certain God. I am saying that you have to have a relationship with a power or a being that is stronger and more powerful than you. And you have to live in accordance with the policies, the law, the code of conduct that religion has set forth. Okay. Hedonism is not a religion. Rastafarianism is not a religion. Secular humanism is not a religion because they don't put anything above the human self and the human desire. If you are following human desire, your human self, your human flesh, and you just want to satisfy your own desires, you are going to be corrupted. You are going to become an inmate yourself because you're going to be caught up in one of the inmate games that they play. These inmate games that they play are all geared towards getting you to break the law, getting you to compromise your ethics, to get you to compromise your code of conduct so that they can get you to bring contraband inside the prison, so that they can talk you into engaging in a sexual relationship, to get them to get you to turn on your beliefs. And once they can get you to turn on your beliefs, everything else is over. Everything else is done. And you are nothing but another inmate. So this week we are discussing, this week we are engaging and we are discussing, let me get over here. Our discussion for this week is week 3. Professionalism in corrections. And the discussion question is, explain the importance of professionalism in corrections. List and define 7 characteristics of professional attitude. In your opinion, which is the most important characteristic? I think I've covered that. I know there's a couple of you that have already answered this question. Let me go through here. And there is no, the one person, I'm going to throw you under the bus, Jasmine, so that you can go fix it. You don't have a list of sources after your post. So make sure that you put your list of sources in your post, or else you are going to find yourself getting a deduction in your grade. Oops, I did not mean to do that, but I did it anyway. So we're still going. We're at 50 minutes. Well, since I turned on the computer. Hopefully that this will be another fun week and we'll get to discuss the corrections. And the one that I think that is most important is integrity. Okay. I believe that the most important characteristic is integrity. And I think so because we have to have, or we must be an example or set an example for the inmates that we represent. Okay. So in my responses, you're going to hear a lot about integrity, a lot about commitment, a lot about faith. Okay. So I hope this is a good lesson. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any comments, you can put them in the Lion's Den discussion forum. And I will see you next Sunday. Once I figure out how to turn it off. Okay, so there we go. I hope you have a great week. I hope everything is good, and I will see you next Sunday.